The story opens with a broad shot high across the tree line of a lavish green rainforest. Intercut is a grouping of pictures of Jake Sawyer, Sam Worthington, a disabled conflict veteran and previous Marine. He awakens in a Goliath spaceship en route to Pandora, a thickly forested Earth-like moon-circling Polyphemus, a monster blue planet like Jupiter. He is one of countless travelers, all awakening after just about 6 years of cryosleep in transit to Pandora. Floating out of his dozing unit in 0G, he's tended by the boat's staff. He opens his storage, which is stamped Soil T. Jake lets us know that he has a departed twin sibling Tom, a researcher who was to be essential for an undeniable level program directed by corporate and military specialists to concentrate on the climate and occupants of Pandora. Since Jake and his sibling are a precise hereditary match, he was given a special open door, assume control over his sibling's agreement with a corporate military element and travel with as little luggage as possible years away to a station on the recently witnessed world, Pandora. Recognizing the ideas of being free and having a new beginning, Jake consents to the arrangement as his sibling's body is incinerated. Presently being moved from the spaceship to Pandora through a bus, Jake is one of many troopers and regular citizen faculty going to land on Pandora, a few 4.3 light a long time from Earth. We get perspectives on the base and its development and monstrous mining machines uncovering the dirt in a huge quarry as Jake considers his new job. The travelers are undeniably trained to wear a full-face breathing veil since the air of the planet won't uphold human existence. 20 seconds of openness to the harmful climate of the planet causes obviousness, with death happening around 4 minutes after the fact. While different travelers land and make their most memorable strides onto the base, called Damnation's Door, which is encircled by an enormous edge wall, Jake follows them in his wheelchair, procuring the moniker, Dinners on Wheels, from a couple of haughty Marines. He recognizes through voiceover that he lost the utilization of his legs during one of his deployments on the planet, and keeping in mind that a spinal injury like his can be fixed, it takes cash, which is difficult to get a hold of in the current economy. Jake goes quickly to a tactical instructions where Colonel Miles Quaritch, Stephen Lang, is tending to the collected troopers and a couple of regular citizens who have gone along. He reminds them they're not in Kansas anymore, and he educates them concerning Pandora's native populace, the Na'vi. Quaritch, brandishing a pudgy of scars in favor of his head, says they are difficult to kill, and essentially everything out there will attempt to kill you. Also, while he must keep his kin alive, he says he won't prevail in this assignment, not with every one of you. Assuming they wish to get by, he proceeds, they should follow Pandora rules. Jake goes to a science lab where he meets scholar Norm Spellman, Joel David Moore, and Dr. Max Patel, Dilip Rao, 2 individuals from the Symbol program. As Jake gets his most memorable gander at his own symbol, we find out about the actual program. People can't inhale Pandora's air, yet the Symbol program empowers a human to connect with their own symbol, a hereditarily reproduced human Na'vi half-breed, and capability as though they were a Na'vi local. In his symbol body, Jake will actually want to walk in the future and inhale the air. The symbols seem to be their human drivers. At the point when Norm tells Jake his symbol appears as though him, Jake significantly says it seems to be his dead sibling. Jake and Norm enter the science office pretty much the time Dr. Beauty Augustine, Sigourney Weaver, the program's science lead, stirs in an uncommonly planned case that connects her to her symbol and flips open the top. Norm tells Jake he hears she loves, establishes better compared to individuals. She emerges from her case and banters in Na'vi with Norm. Happy with Norm's order of the language, she goes to Jake. She lets him know she wants his sibling Tom, the PhD who prepared 3 years for the Pandora mission, yet she needn't bother with Jake since Jake has no lab experience and has never been connected to a symbol. Jake attempts to suggest that he's a speedy student, yet the irritable effortlessness isn't intrigued. Elegance stomps off to the base's control space to go up against Parker Selfridge, Giovanni Ribisi, base administrator and agent for the Assets Advancement Organization, RDA, a company that directs all military and other faculty on the province. He tells her Jake will act as a security escort in her group while they're in the world's surface. Effortlessness tells Parker she wants a specialist, not a Marine dropout. She questions Jake will be of any utilization to her natural examination. Parker answers, saying he deviates, saying they got lucky with Jake. Since he's an ideal hereditary counterpart for the symbol expected for his twin sibling, they can involve his tactical abilities in a symbol body toward the general target of the activity, mining the mineral unobtainium, a strong wellspring of energy that sells for a large number a kilo, and can take modest power back to a perishing Earth. Parker advises Beauty one method for achieving this goal is to win the hearts and brains of the locals, to get their collaboration. Elegance contends that large numbers of the Na'vi have been killed by the military under the protection of Selfridge's activity. Back in the lab next morning, Jake and Norm are connected to their symbols interestingly. Jake, in his symbol, awakens in an alternate room with different symbols and staff. Inside a couple of seconds, Jake is making his overseers apprehensive on the grounds that, excited with his capacity to move his legs once more, he is moving excessively fast and attempting to walk, whenever he first has had the option to do as such since turning into a paraplegic. The human lab laborers can't stop him. A Na'vi is north of 10 feet tall, some of the time more like 12 feet, and far more grounded than people. At the point when his long tail pushes over instruments, a staff part advises him to pause and rests once more. Jake disregards him and blasts out of the room and into the sunshine. He ends up in an entertainment region where different symbols are playing sports and staff, in their defensive stuff, are performing different obligations. Jake meets Elegance's symbol, who, preferred tempered over human beauty, goes with Jake to the sleeping shelter where he is ultimately urged to rest. Before he rests to rest, Jake reviews his brain line, a long limb that seems to be a twist of hair. Toward the finish of his line is a group of stowed-away rings. At the point when the symbol rests, the connection is broken and Jake himself stirs. Jake later meets Trudy Chacon, Michelle Rodriguez, a resigned Marine pilot with whom he'll endure half a month becoming acclimated to his symbol and investigating Pandora. Jake will act as the entryway heavy weapons specialist on her team. Jake meets with Colonel Quaritch, who is lifting loads. The colonel tells Jake he's looked into his administration record and was dazzled with what he achieved on a portion of his visits, remembering one for Venezuela. The colonel cautions Jake about the perils looking for him on Pandora. He likewise expresses his conviction that the symbol program is a joke yet that it offers a chance for an interesting surveillance mission, on the off chance that Jake can figure it out and let the colonel know what he needs to be familiar with the locals, how to convince them to create some distance from the unobtainium metal stores and how to hit them hard on the off chance that they won't. The colonel will make sure that Jake gets the medical procedure he wants to recapture utilization of his legs. The colonel moves into an AMP suit, a bipedal exoskeleton utilized for missions on Pandora, and moves off. Relinked with his symbol, Jake flies over Pandora's surface in Trudy's gunship, alongside Effortlessness, Norm, and others. The group lands in a backwoods, where Effortlessness and Norm start to take tests of the vegetation and make estimations. Jake is diverted by his environmental factors and meanders into a field of helichoradian blossoms, which are very tall and therapist at Jake's touch. Inconvenience shows up when a Titanothere, a vigorously reinforced, hammer-headed animal, faces Jake. Effortlessness orders him to hold fast and not shoot, or, in all likelihood, the creature will lash out and charge. At any rate, his covering is excessively thick for weapons to have any impact. Jake effectively holds his ground, yet simply because another monster, a puma-like Thanator, has moved toward him from behind and has caused the Titanotheres to withdraw and encompass their young. The Thanator then goes to Jake. Effortlessness advises him to run, and he's sought after by the Thanator in a pursuit that isolates Jake from his group. He loses his firearm and is brought down by the creature, yet liberates himself by delivering his rucksack. At last, the pursuit prompts a cascade, where Jake leaps to somewhere safe and secure, leaving the Thanator thundering above him. Jake's group looks for him, yet Trudy says they'll need to get back to base since night operations are not permitted. Elegance says he won't last the evening. It's currently night and we see Jake honing a long stick into a lance. Jake is being watched from a higher place, this time by a Na'vi. The Na'vi points a bolt at Jake and is going to shoot, however rules against it when little, ethereal, radiant animals land on her bow. Later we learn they are extremely unadulterated spirits, otherwise called the Seeds of Awa, the Na'vi's all-strong god. The Toxify withdraws. Jake is followed by a pack of viper wolves. He plunges the finish of his lance into a flammable pitch-like fluid. He lights the end and uses it as a light against the viper wolves, who encompass him, teeth exposed, jaws snapping. The creatures assault Jake, he retaliates, kills some, and is brought somewhere around others. The bowman who was noticing Jake joins the fight on his side. She kills some viper wolves and makes the rest escape. She softly finally gives some closure some crying injured creatures and expresses supplications over them. Jake endeavors to say thanks to her for assisting him with warding off the aggressors. She meets his thanks with disdain, lets him know this is his shortcoming, that they didn't have to bite the dust, and that he ought to return to where he came from. Jake inquires as to whether she feels as such, why she helped him. You have major areas of strength for a No apprehension, she makes sense of. Yet, moronic. Jake endeavors to follow his hero up into a tree, requests her assistance, and says he needs to learn. He's rebuffed and told to return, that sky individuals can't be educated. All of a sudden, the seeds of Awa return and begin to arrive on the apprehensive Jake. He asks what they are. Exceptionally unadulterated spirits, she answers, and Jake is covered by them, establishing a connection with his friend. At the point when the seeds float off, she yields and advises him to accompany her. As Jake attempts to stay aware of his hero, Neytiri, Zoe Saldana, he is felled by a bolo tossed by a watch of Omatakayan fighters. Their chief is Suti, Laz Alonso, next in line to the privileged position and the man Neytiri is supposed to wed. Neytiri prevents them from hurting Jake by telling them, there has been a sign from Awa. Suti tells his men to bring him along to Tashik, father, surmised spelling, and Awa, mother. Jake is introduced to Neytiri's folks, Itukan, West Studi, and Moa, CCH Pounder, who are the lord and sovereign of the clan, separately. Jake lets the elderly folks know that he is a fighter, a dreamwalker, and his expectation is to gain from them. Moa pricks Jake's chest and tastes his blood, declaring it is the desire of Awa for him to live with the Omaticaya, and for Neytiri, but hesitantly, to be his educator in their ways and customs. After a custom social event, Jake is brought to his bed, a leaf high up in the home tree that encloses him like a case. As he nods off, human Jake is restored. In his next videolog, Jake examines his language examples and says his experience with the Navi is like field stripping a weapon. Enough redundancy and you can't resist the urge to learn it. This is intercut with scenes of his kept preparation with Neytiri, who shows him the Navi Woods Association. She lets Jake know that all energy is acquired and one day we need to give it back. Jake appears to understand this, and as he says a request for a creature he chased and recently killed, Neytiri says that he is prepared for a significant soul-changing experience, to bond with Enrida, Declan, a flying mountain banshee. To arrive at the banshee's settling grounds, Jake should go with Neytiri, Suti and 2 other Navi learners to the most noteworthy locale of the Thank Heaven Mountains. A few factors, the level, the savagery of the untamed banshees, make this a risky example, yet Jake's absence of dread and fruitful security with his banshee gain him the hesitant appreciation of the Navi champions present, even Suti. He makes the bond with the ringlets in his line, and as he rides the flying creature he comments that he's a sorry horseman but rather he was destined to do this. Jake, Neytiri, and the others ride together to the Tree of Spirits, the most sacrosanct spot to the Navi. While flying on a hunting foray, Jake and Neytiri are out of nowhere sought after and went after by an animal referred to the Navi as Torek, a monster and splendidly shaded flying mountain banshee with deadly expectations toward all that flies. Neytiri says its name signifies last shadow. The Torek's shadow, once seen, is typically the last shadow one at any point will see, as its assault is quite often lethal. Back at Hometree, Neytiri shows Jake the skeleton of a forerunner of the present Torek. She lets him know the last individual to ride a Torek was hers granddad, who utilized the creature to join the 5 Navi clans in a period of extraordinary distress. Such an individual would procure the title Torek Motto, Rider of the Last Shadow. At the point when Jake returns to his human structure, it's unmistakable he's been changed by this most recent experience, for he expresses, out there is this present reality, in here is the fantasy. The Colonel approaches him to let him know his main goal is achieved and he's to get back to Earth that day. Also, great to his promise, the Colonel has sorted out for Jake to seek the treatment he wants to recapture utilization of his legs. Jake wishes to defer his takeoff since he says he's right at the place where he's to be started into the clan and acknowledged as one of them, and afterward would have the status to haggle with the Navi to migrate. The Colonel submits. Jake goes to a Navi function, where he learns the Navi accept that each individual can be conceived 2 times. Neytiri drives Jake to a position of supplication, the Tree of Voices, where they utilize their lines to bond with the tree. Neytiri tells Jake he can make a bow from the tree. What's more, that he can pick a lady. Jake lets Neytiri know that he has previously picked her, game die, and she says that she has picked him. They rest together under the tree and Jake awakens back in the lab. Toward the beginning of the day, Neytiri stirs.